The church bells tolled, but they couldn't drown out the whispers. My white dress, once a symbol of dreams, felt like a shroud as I stood frozen at the altar, staring at the empty space where David was supposed to be. A note, slipped under my dressing room door, had shattered everything. I can't do this. I'm sorry, David. The gasps from the pews stung like wasps. My mother's hand gripped mine, her nails digging into my palm, but I barely felt it. My best friend, Sarah, was already sobbing, her mascara streaking as she tried to shield me from the pitying stares. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of betrayal. David, the man I'd loved for 3 years, had left me on our wedding day without a word, without a fight. The humiliation was a living thing, clawing at my chest, threatening to pull me under. I tore off my veil, the delicate lace ripping under my trembling fingers, and ran, past the shocked guests, past the flower arrangements I'd spent months choosing, out into the blistering July sun. My heels sank into the grass, and I kicked them off, sprinting barefoot toward the only place I could think of, my Aunt Clara's bakery, 2 towns over. It was the one place where I'd always felt safe, where the world made sense, where the smell of fresh bread could heal any wound. Or so I hoped. The drive was a blur, tears streaming down my face as I gripped the steering wheel of my old Corolla. My phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from my mom, texts from Sarah, but I couldn't face them. Not yet. By the time I pulled up to Clara's Crumbs, the little shop with its faded blue awning, my wedding dress was crumpled, my makeup smeared. I stumbled through the door, the bell jingling softly, and there she was, Aunt Clara, her gray hair tied back, flour dusting her apron, her warm brown eyes locking onto mine. "Ellie, sweetheart," she said, her voice steady but laced with concern. She didn't ask questions, didn't flinch at my disheveled state. She just opened her arms, and I fell into them, sobbing like a child. The bakery smelled of vanilla and cinnamon, a stark contrast to the chaos in my heart. Clara guided me to a stool in the back, where the hum of the ovens drowned out the world. "You're here now?" she whispered. "That's all that matters." Over the next few hours, as the sun dipped low, I told her everything. The note, the empty altar, the way my heart felt like it had been carved out with a dull knife. Clara listened, her hands never still, kneading dough, shaping loaves, as if her work could hold the world together. "You don't need to decide anything today," she said finally. "Stay here. Work with me. Let time do its job." I wanted to argue, to insist I was fine, but I wasn't. So I stayed. That night, I slept in the small apartment above the bakery, the scent of rising dough drifting through the cracked window. It was the first time in hours I didn't feel like I was drowning. The next morning, Clara handed me an apron. "You're not hiding," she said firmly. "You're healing, and you'll do it with flour on your hands." I'd always loved baking with her as a kid, but this was different. This was survival. I threw myself into it, measuring flour, cracking eggs, learning the rhythm of the bakery. The regulars, with their kind smiles and curious glances, didn't ask about the wedding. Clara must have warned them off, and I was grateful. Days turned into weeks. The bakery became my sanctuary. I learned to shape brioche, to pipe delicate swirls of frosting, to laugh again when Clara teased me about my lopsided scones. But David's absence lingered, a bruise that ached when I thought of him. Why had he left? Was it me? The questions gnawed at me, but I pushed them down, focusing on the dough, the customers, the life I was rebuilding. Then, one rainy afternoon, 6 weeks after the wedding, a letter arrived. It was addressed to me, in David's handwriting. My hands shook as I held it, the paper crisp and heavy with promisor pain. Clara watched me from across the counter, her eyes steady. "You don't have to open it now," she said, "or ever, if you don't want to." But I did. I needed to know. I tore it open, my heart pounding. The words blurred at first, but as I read, they sharpened into a confession that stole my breath. David hadn't just left May, he'd been seeing someone else. For months. A coworker, Rachel, who'd been at our engagement party, smiling at me while she stole him away. The note wasn't an apology. It was an excuse. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would be easier this way. Easier for who? I wanted to scream. My hands crumpled the letter, and Clara was there, pulling me into her arms again. He's a coward, she said fiercely. And you are not. That night, I didn't sleep. I baked instead, pounding dough until my arms ached, letting the anger fuel me. I wasn't just humiliated anymore, I was furious. And somewhere in that fury, a spark ignited. I wasn't going to let David's betrayal define me. I was going to build something better, something mine. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. Clara's bakery was struggling, she'd admitted as much, though she'd never complained. The equipment was outdated, the marketing non-existent. I'd studied business in college. I could help. I could make this place thrive. And maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild myself in the process. I showed Clara my ideas, a new website, social media, seasonal specials. She hesitated, her frugal nature wary of change. But my passion won her over. All right, Ellie, she said with a grin. Let's see what you've got. The next month was a whirlwind. I threw myself into the bakery, not just as a worker, but as a partner. We rebranded Clara's Crumbs as Sunlit Sweets, a name that felt like hope. I designed a logo, set up an Instagram account, and started posting photos of our pastries, glowing in the morning light. Customers came, first in a trickle, then in a flood. The regulars spread the word, and soon we had lines out the door. But David's letter still haunted me. I hadn't responded, hadn't reached out. Part of me wanted to confront him, to demand answers. But another part, the part growing stronger every day, wanted to let him go. I wasn't ready yet, but I could feel the shift, like dough rising under a warm towel. One morning, as I was icing a batch of cupcakes, the bell jingled, and I looked up to see Sarah. She hadn't visited since the wedding, though we'd texted. Her eyes were bright with excitement. Ellie, you won't believe this, she said, holding up her phone. Rachel's engaged. To someone else. David's a mess. I froze, the piping bag trembling in my hand. For a moment, the old pain flared, but then something new took its place. Strange, fierce satisfaction. I wasn't the only one he'd hurt, and I wasn't the one falling apart. Let him be, I said, surprising myself with the calm in my voice. I'm building something better. Sarah grinned, pulling me into a hug. You are, Ellie. You really are. That night, as I locked up the bakery, I felt a weight lift. The humiliation was still there, but it was smaller now, overshadowed by something stronger, purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And this was only the beginning. The bakery's success grew like yeast in warm water, steady and unstoppable. Sunlit Sweets was no longer just Clara's dream, it was mine too. The morning rush had become a ritual, locals clamoring for our lavender scones, tourists snapping photos of our pastel macarons, and kids pressing their noses against the glass case, begging for cookies. I'd found a rhythm, a purpose, but the shadow of David's betrayal still lingered, a quiet ache I couldn't fully shake. Clara noticed. She didn't say much, but her glances were sharp, her hugs a little tighter. One chilly October morning, as we prepped for the day, she slid a mug of chamomile tea across the counter. You're carrying him with you, she said, her voice soft but firm. It's time to let him go, Ellie. I wanted to argue, to say I was fine, but the truth was heavier than the flour sacks in the storeroom. David's letter had cracked something in me, and while I was rebuilding, the pieces didn't fit quite right. I nodded, sipping the tea, and promised myself I'd try. That afternoon, A new customer walked in, a man in his late 30s, with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. He introduced himself as Tom, a food blogger who'd heard about our revival through Instagram. "This place is magic," he said, biting into a raspberry tart. "Mind if I write about it?" His enthusiasm was infectious, and I agreed, blushing as he scribbled notes and snapped photos. When he left, he handed me his card. "Call me if you ever want to brainstorm marketing ideas," he said with a wink. Clara raised an eyebrow as the door closed. "He's cute," she teased, and I laughed, swatting her with a dish towel. For the first time in months, the idea of someone new didn't feel like a betrayal of my old self. It felt like possibility. Tom's article went live a week later, and the response was overwhelming. Orders poured in: catering gigs, birthday cakes, even a wedding. The irony wasn't lost on me. I threw myself into the work, but the wedding order hit hard. As I piped buttercream roses, memories of my own ruined days surfaced. Sharp and unbidden, Clara found me crying in the back, my hands sticky with frosting. "You're stronger than this," she said, wiping my tears. "You're not that girl anymore." She was right, but strength didn't erase pain. It just made it bearable. I finished the cake, and when the bride sent us a glowing thank you note, I felt a flicker of pride. I was building something real, something David couldn't touch. Then, one crisp November evening, the past came knocking. The bell jingled, and I looked up to see David standing in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes hollow. My heart lurched, but I squared my shoulders, wiping flour from my hands. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I need to talk," he said, his voice cracking. "Please, Ellie." Clara hovered nearby, her expression a mix of protectiveness and curiosity. I nodded, and she retreated to the back, leaving us alone in the quiet shop. David looked different, thinner, older, like the weight of his choices had carved lines into his face. "I messed up," he began, his words tumbling out. "Rachel, it was a mistake. She's gone. And to miss you." His confession hit like a punch, but not the way I'd expected. There was no longing, no pull to forgive him. Just anger, cold and sharp. "You left me at the altar," I said, my voice low. "You didn't just break my heart, David. You humiliated me. And now you think you can walk in here and fix it." He flinched, but I wasn't done. "I've built something here. Without you. I don't need your apologies." I pointed to the door, my hand steady. "Go." He left, and I locked the door behind him, my heart pounding but lighter. Clara emerged, a proud smile on her face. "That's my girl," she said, pulling me into a hug. For the first time, I believed I was moving on. The next day, I called Tom, not because I was ready for anything serious, but because I was ready to try. We met for coffee, and his easy laugh, his genuine interest in my dreams, felt like sunlight after a long winter. He had ideas for the bakery pop-up events, a loyalty program, and I found myself excited, not just about the business, but about him. By December, Sunlit Sweets was thriving. We hired 2 new bakers, and Clara started talking about expanding. I was learning to balance the books, to negotiate with suppliers, to trust myself. But the real change was inside me. I wasn't the girl who'd run from the church anymore. I was Ellie, the woman who'd turned pain into purpose. Still, the holidays brought a new challenge. My parents invited me home for Christmas, and I knew I'd have to face the questions, the pity, the memories. I almost said no, but Clara insisted. "You can't hide forever," she said. "Show them who you are now." So I went, carrying a box of our best pastries as a shield. The dinner was awkward at first. My mom's hugs too tight, my dad's questions too careful. But as we ate, as I shared stories of the bakery, I saw their pride. They saw Minute, the broken bride, but the woman I'd become. When I returned to the bakery, Tom was waiting with a surprise, a custom sign for Sunlit Sweets, hand-painted with our logo. Thought it'd look good out front, he said, grinning. I hugged him, my heart full in a way it hadn't been in months. The new year was days away, and I felt its shift I'd been chasing. I wasn't just surviving David's betrayal. I was building a life I loved. One pastry, one smile, one brave step at a time. January swept in with a bitter chill, but Sunlit Sweets glowed with warmth. The bakery was a hive of activity, our new bakers bustling alongside Clara and me, filling orders for New Year's parties and winter weddings. I'd found a rhythm, a balance between the chaos of the kitchen and the quiet moments when I could breathe, plan, dream. But David's visit lingered like a stubborn stain, reminding me that closure wasn't as simple as a single confrontation. Tom became a regular presence, stopping by with ideas or just to chat. His quiet confidence grounded me, but I kept him at arm's length, wary of trusting too soon. He didn't push, and that made me like him more. One snowy afternoon, as we decorated cookies for a local school event, he asked about my life before the bakery. I hesitated, then told him about David, not the whole story, just enough. His jaw tightened, but he didn't pry. You're stronger than most people I know, he said, and I believed him. The bakery's success brought new challenges. A local competitor, Sweet Haven, started mimicking our specials, undercutting our prices. Clara was unfazed, but I felt the pressure. We couldn't afford to lose momentum. I proposed a Valentine's Day event, a sweetheart soiree with live music, exclusive desserts, and a photo booth. Clara loved the idea, and we dove into planning, spending late nights designing menus and stringing fairy lights across the shop. The event was a risk, but it paid off. On February 14th, Sunlit Sweets was packed, couples laughing, kids sneaking extra cupcakes. Tom was there, helping with setup, his sleeves rolled up, his smile easy. When a slow song played, he offered his hand. Dance with me, he asked. My heart stuttered, but I took his hand, and for those 3 minutes, the world felt right. After the event, as we cleaned up, Clara pulled me aside. You're glowing, Ellie, she said. Not just because of the bakery. Let yourself be happy. Her words hit hard. I'd been so focused on proving myself to David, to the world, that I'd forgotten how to feel joy without fear. Then, a week later, Sarah called with news that shook me. David's been asking about you, she said. He's telling people he wants you back. My stomach twisted. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the part still raw from his betrayal, wanted answers. Why now? What gave him the right? I didn't have to wait long. The next day, David showed up again, this time with flowers, his eyes pleading. I know I hurt you, he said, his voice low. But I've changed. Rachel was a mistake. I want us to try again. The audacity of it stunned me. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You think flowers fix this? You left me. David. You chose her. And now you're here because she left you. His silence was answer enough. I pointed to the door. Don't come back. He left, and I felt a strange calm. The anger was still there, but it wasn't controlling me anymore. I was choosing my path, not reacting to his. The bakery kept growing. We landed a contract with a local cafe to supply pastries, and I started teaching baking classes on weekends. The classes were a hit, filled with kids, retirees, even a few shy couples. Teaching forced me to articulate what I'd learned, not just about baking, but about resilience. Every time I showed someone how to knead dough, I felt stronger, more grounded. Tom was there through it all, not just as a friend, but as something more. One evening, as we closed up, he kissed me, a soft, tentative kiss that left me breathless. I've wanted to do that for weeks, he said, his eyes searching mine. I smiled, my heart open in a way I hadn't thought possible. But life wasn't done testing me. In March, a letter arrived from David's mother. Of all people, she begged me to meet with him, claiming he was lost without me. The letter was manipulative, dripping with guilt, and it made my blood boil. I showed it to Clara, who snorted. "Toss it," she said. "He's not your problem." I didn't toss it. I wrote back. Polite but firm, David made his choice. I've made mine. Please respect that. Sending it felt like cutting the last thread tying me to him. Spring arrived, and with it, a sense of renewal. The bakery was thriving. My classes were booked solid, and Tom and I were growing closer. I wasn't naive. I knew trust would take time, but I was ready to try. One sunny afternoon, as we walked through the park, Tom took my hand. "I'm all in, Ellie," he said. "Whenever you're ready." I wasn't ready yet, but I was close. The bakery, Clara, Tom, they were my anchors. Proof that I could build a life bigger than my pain. David's shadow was fading, and in its place was something new, hope. Spring bloomed, and sunlit sweets became a cornerstone of the town. The bakery's windows glowed with pastel decorations, and our new lemon rosemary scones were a hit. I was settling into my new life, but the past had a way of creeping back. David's mother's letter had been a reminder. Some wounds heal slowly, and some people don't let go easily. Clara noticed my distraction. One morning, as we rolled out dough for cinnamon buns, she fixed me with a knowing look. "You're still carrying him, Ellie," she said. "Not in your heart, but in your head. Let him go for good." I nodded, but it wasn't that simple. David's betrayal had left scars, and while I was stronger, I wasn't invincible. Tom was a bright spot, his presence steady but never pushy. We'd started spending more time together outside the bakery dinners, walks, even a trip to a local vineyard. He made me laugh, made me feel seen, but I was cautious. Trusting again felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Still, his patience was a balm, and I found myself leaning into it. Then, in April, trouble came from an unexpected source. Sweet Haven, our rival bakery, launched a smear campaign. Anonymous online reviews accused us of using cheap ingredients, of being overhyped. The timing was suspicious, and the reviews were too similar to be coincidence. Clara was furious, but I was strategic. "We fight this with quality," I told her. "Let's invite customers to a tasting event. Show them who we are." The event was a gamble, but we pulled it off. We offered free samples, live baking demos, and a chance to meet the team. The community showed up in droves, their support overwhelming. Tom was there, filming a behind-the-scenes video for our social media. When he posted it, the response was electric orders spiked, and the negative reviews were drowned out by glowing testimonials. But the victory was short-lived. One evening, as I locked up, I found a note taped to the door. "You can't outrun the truth, Ellie." No signature, but I knew David's handwriting. My stomach churned. Was he behind the reviews? Was this his way of punishing me for moving on? I showed the note to Clara, who cursed under her breath the rarity for her. "He's desperate," she said. "Don't let him get to you." But he already had. That night, I barely slept, the note's words looping in my mind. I didn't want to confront him again, but I couldn't ignore this. The next day, I called Sarah. "Is David still talking about me?" I asked. She hesitated, then admitted he'd been spiraling, drinking too much, ranting about how I'd ruined him by moving on. "He's obsessed," she said. "Be careful, Ellie." I didn't want to be afraid, but I was. I told Tom about the note, and his face darkened. "You don't have to face this alone," he said. "I'm here." His words steadied me, and we came up with a plan. No confrontation, but vigilance. I installed a security camera outside the bakery and saved the note, just in case. Work kept me grounded. The bakery was busier than ever, and we were planning a summer festival booth. I threw myself into the preparations, designing a new line of fruit tarts and coordinating with local vendors. Clara was beaming, proud of how far we'd come. "This is your doing, Ellie," she said one night. "You've made this place a home." Her words hit deep. The bakery wasn't just a refuge, Anna Maria, it was my purpose. I was good at this. Not just surviving, but creating something that brought people joy. Still, David's note gnawed at me, a reminder that my past wasn't done with me. In May, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Rachel, David's ex. Her voice was shaky, apologetic. "I didn't know he'd leave you like that," she said. "He lied to me too. I'm sorry, Ellie." Her words were a surprise, but they didn't erase the pain. I thanked her for calling and hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. David had hurt us both, but I wasn't going to let him define me anymore. That evening, Tom took me to dinner. Over candlelight, he told me about his own pasta divorce. "A fresh start. I didn't think I'd find someone like you," he said, his hand brushing mine. I didn't pull away. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future with him, not as a replacement for David, but as something new, something mine. As summer approached, I felt a shift. The bakery was thriving. My heart was opening, and David's shadow was shrinking. I wasn't naive. I knew he might try again, but I was ready. I had Clara, Tom, the bakery, and most importantly, myself. The woman I'd become was stronger than the one he'd left at the altar. Summer arrived, and Sunlit Sweets was a beacon of color and warmth. Our festival booth was a hit, with lines stretching across the town square for our peach cobbler cupcakes. I was in my element, handing out samples, laughing with customers, feeling the weight of the past 6 months lift. But David's note still haunted me, a splinter I couldn't quite pull out. Clara sensed it. One quiet morning, as we prepped for the day, she handed me a rolling pin and a challenge. "You're fighting ghosts, Ellie," she said. "Bake something new, something that's just you." I took her advice, spending hours experimenting until I created a lavender honey tart, delicate, bold, a reflection of the woman I was becoming. When customers raved, I felt a surge of pride. This was mine. Tom was a constant now, not just at the bakery, but in my life. We'd started dating officially, though I still held back, afraid of being hurt again. He understood, never pushing, but his small gestures, bringing me coffee, fixing a wobbly table chipped away at my walls. One evening, as we watched the sunset from the bakery's back porch, he said, "I'm not going anywhere. Ellie, you set the pace." His words were a promise, and I was starting to believe them. Then, in June, the past roared back. I arrived at the bakery to find the front window smashed, glass glittering on the sidewalk. Inside, a brick lay on the floor, a note tied to it, "You'll never escape me." My heart stopped. David. It had to be him. Clara called the police while I stood frozen, the violation sinking in. This wasn't just a note, it was an attack. The police took a report, but there was no proof it was David. The security camera had caught a hooded figure, too vague to identify. Tom stayed with me that day, his presence a lifeline. "He's trying to scare you," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Don't let him win." I didn't want to, but fear was a powerful thing. Clara suggested I stay with her for a while, and I agreed, moving back into the apartment above the bakery. The community rallied around us, customers bringing flowers, offering support. We replaced the window, scrubbed away the damage, but the emotional toll lingered. I couldn't let David control me. I poured my energy into the bakery, launching a new campaign, Sweets for Strength, donating a portion of profits to a local women's shelter. The idea came from my own journey, a way to turn pain into purpose. The campaign was a success, and the shelter's director invited me to speak at their annual fundraiser. Me, the girl who'd run from her wedding, speaking to a room full of survivors. The thought terrified me, but I said yes. Preparing for the speech forced me to confront my story. I wrote draft after draft, each one peeling back layers of shame and anger. When the night came, I stood at the podium, my hands trembling, and told my truth, the humiliation, the rebuilding, the strength I'd found in flour and sugar and love. The audience applauded, some in tears, and I felt a weight lift. I wasn't just surviving, I was helping others do the same. Tom was there, his smile proud. Afterward, he pulled me into a hug. "You're incredible," he whispered. For the first time, I felt it. But David wasn't done. A week later, he showed up at the bakery, drunk and disheveled. "I just want to talk," he slurred, banging on the locked door. Clara called the police while I hid in the back, my heart racing. They took him away, and I filed a restraining order. It wasn't enough to erase the fear, but it was a start. The bakery kept me grounded. We expanded our menu, added outdoor seating, and planned a fall festival. Tom helped with the logistics, his business savvy a perfect complement to my creativity. Clara started calling us a power couple, and though I laughed it off, the idea warmed me. By July, 6 months after my ruined wedding, I was a different person. The bakery was thriving. My speech had inspired a flood of donations to the shelter, and Tom and I were building something real. David's actions still cast a shadow, but it was smaller now, less powerful. I was learning to live with the scars, not as wounds, but as proof of my strength. One evening, as I locked up, Tom surprised me with a picnic under the stars. He'd set up a blanket behind the bakery, complete with lanterns and my favorite lemon rosemary scones. "I love you, Ellie," he said, his voice steady. I froze, the words catching me off guard. But then I smiled. "I love you too," I whispered, and meant it. The stars above us felt like a promisea new chapter, written by me. The restraining order kept David away, but his presence lingered in the edges of my mind. Every creak of the bakery's old floors, every shadow outside the window, made my heart race. Yet Sunlit Sweets was my fortress, its warm lights and sweet scents a reminder of how far I'd come. I wasn't the broken bride anymore, I was Ellie, the woman who'd turned betrayal into triumph. Clara was my rock, her faith in me unwavering. One August morning, as we prepped for the fall festival, she handed me a set of keys. "The bakery's yours too now," she said, her eyes misty. "I'm making you a partner." I protested, "Built this place from nothing," but she waved me off. "You've earned it, Ellie. This is your home." Her words settled deep, filling cracks I hadn't realized were still there. I hugged her, tears pricking my eyes, and vowed to make her proud. The festival was our biggest challenge yet, a weekend-long event with live music, food trucks, and a Sunlit Sweets booth offering our new apple cider donuts. Tom helped plan, his calm efficiency balancing my nervous energy. We were a team, and it felt right. The festival was a whirlwind. Families swarmed our booth, kids giggling as they licked frosting from their fingers. A local newspaper featured us, calling Sunlit Sweets the heart of the town. I framed the article, hanging it behind the counter. For the first time, I felt like I belonged not just to the bakery, but to this life I'd built. Tom and I grew closer, our relationship deepening with every shared laugh, every quiet moment. He wasn't David, didn't make grand promises or sweeping gestures. His love was steady, shown in small acts, fixing a leaky pipe, bringing me flowers from his garden, listening when I needed to talk. I was falling hard, and it scared me, but I let myself feel it. Then, in September, the past struck again. A lawyer called, representing David. He was suing me, claiming I'd defamed him by speaking about our breakup at the shelter fundraiser. The accusation was absurd, but the legal notice was real, a heavy weight in my hands. Clara was livid, ready to fight, but I felt sick. How could he still have this power over me? Tom sat me down that night, his voice calm but firm. "He's grasping at straws," Ellie, this is about control, not truth. We'll fight it. His confidence steadied me, and we hired a lawyer. The case was weak. Me speech hadn't named David directly, but the stress was real. I poured it into the bakery, creating a new line of spiced pumpkin cookies that sold out daily. The community rallied around us. Customers left notes of support, and the shelter's director offered to testify on my behalf. You told your truth, she said. Don't let him silence you. Her words echoed Clara's, and I clung to them, refusing to let David win. As the lawsuit loomed, I found strength in routine. Baking, teaching, loving Tom, these were my anchors. One evening, as we decorated a wedding cake, Tom asked about my dreams, not just for the bakery, but for me. I hesitated, then admitted I wanted to expand Sunlit Sweets, maybe open a second location. His eyes lit up. Let's make it happen, he said, and we spent hours sketching plans, dreaming big. The lawsuit hearing came in late September. I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding. Tom and Clara on either side. David was there, his face drawn, his lawyer spinning a tale of emotional harm. Our lawyer dismantled it, presenting evidence of David's harassment, the note, the brick, the restraining order. The judge dismissed the case, her ruling sharp, frivolous, and without merit. Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by exhaustion. David approached me outside the courthouse, his eyes desperate. I just wanted to fix things, he said. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man diminished by his own choices. You can't fix this, I said, my voice steady. I've moved on. And I had. Back at the bakery, we celebrated with champagne and cupcakes, Clara toasting to new beginnings. Tom pulled me aside, his hand warm in mine. I'm so proud of you, he said. I kissed him, no longer afraid of what came next. October dawned, and Sunlit Sweets was busier than ever. We were planning a Halloween event, complete with costume contests and spooky treats. I was learning to trust again, not just Tom but myself. David's shadow was gone, replaced by light. Clara's faith, Tom's love, my own strength. The festival was days away, and I felt it. Everything had changed. I wasn't running anymore. I was home. October painted the town in gold and crimson, and Sunlit Sweets was alive with Halloween spirit. Our spooky-themed event drew crowds, kids in costumes grabbing ghost-shaped cookies, adults sipping pumpkin spice lattes. I stood behind the counter, watching the chaos with a smile, my heart full. 6 months ago, I'd been a runaway bride, broken and lost. Now, I was a partner in a thriving bakery, a woman in love, a survivor who'd reclaimed her story. Clara was in her element, dressed as a witch, handing out candy to giggling kids. Tom was there too, wearing a goofy vampire cape, helping with the photo booth. His presence was a constant now, woven into my days like sugar and dough. We hadn't talked about the future explicitly, but I could feel it building, steady and sweet. The lawsuit's dismissal had been a turning point. David hadn't contacted me since, and I heard through Sarah that he'd moved away, chasing a new job, a new life. I wished him no harm, but I felt nothing for him anymore, not anger, not pain, just a quiet indifference. He was a chapter I'd closed. The bakery was my focus now. Clara and I were scouting locations for a second Sunlit Sweets, dreaming of a larger kitchen, a cafe space. Tom was all in, offering to help with the business plan, his excitement matching mine. This is just the start, he said one night, as we pored over blueprints. You're going to build an empire. I laughed, but his belief in me was intoxicating. I wasn't just rebuilding, I was creating, shaping a life that was mine alone. The bakery had saved me, but I'd saved it too, pouring my heart into every recipe, every customer smile. Sweets for Strength had raised thousands for the women's shelter, and I was planning a winter fundraiser, determined to give back. One crisp October evening, as we closed up, Tom surprised me with a small box. Inside was a necklace, a tiny silver sun pendant. "For the light you bring," he said, fastening it around my neck. I kissed him, tears in my eyes. Not from pain, but from joy. "I love you," I said, the words easy now. "True." Clara watched us, her smile knowing. "Told you you'd find your way," she said later, as we cleaned the kitchen. I hugged her, grateful for her wisdom, her love, her belief in me when I'd had none. The Halloween event was a triumph. The town buzzing about sunlit sweets. We sold out of everything. And as I locked up that night, I felt a profound peace. The bakery's warm glow spilled onto the street, a beacon of hope. I thought of the girl who'd run here, barefoot and broken, and marveled at how far she'd come. November loomed, and with it, the anniversary of my almost wedding. I wasn't dreading it. Instead, I planned a quiet celebration at dinner with Clara, Tom, and Sarah, toasting to new beginnings. The bakery was thriving. My heart was full, and I was ready for whatever came next. As I stood outside Sunlit Sweets, the sun pendant cool against my skin, I realized something. I hadn't just survived David's betrayal. I'd transformed it. The humiliation that had once defined me was now a stepping stone, proof of my resilience. I was Ellie, partner, creator, survivor, lover. I was enough. The stars above twinkled, and I smiled. Everything had changed, and I was ready for more.